Good evening in Japan, good morning in Germany, and hello wherever you are right now. And a very warm welcome to the virtual symposium on digital innovation for decarbonization, which is jointly organized by the Japanese-German Center Berlin, the JDZB, the German Economic Institute in Cologne, and Fujitsu Limited in Tokyo. Thank you all very much for joining us today. My name is Phoebe Stella Holtgrün, Head of Conferences and Project Management at the Japanese-German Center Berlin, and it is my honor to serve as your MC today. Please let me give first some organizational reminders for the audience. We kindly ask you to keep your sound turned off during all times, except when asking a question or making a comment during the discussion. You're welcome to actively participate during the discussion in the last part of the symposium by raising your virtual hand. Please wait for the moderator to address you and then turn on your video and microphone. Please feel also encouraged to use the chat box for questions and comments. The event will be recorded and will be published on YouTube later. Please note that you or your name might appear if you use the video function. Thank you. Now we start with the program, and first of all, I would like to kindly ask the Secretary General of the Japanese-German Center Berlin, Dr. Julia Münch, to welcome you.
Good morning and konnichiwa. Thank you, Dr. Holtgrün, for handing over the mic to me. Dear Professor BARDT, dear Dr. SCHULZ, dear speakers, namely Professor Dr. STRÜKER, Dr. MARMIROLI, Fujimoto-san, and moderator Dr. NELIGAN. Dear participants from all over the world, my name is Julia Münch, and as a Secretary General of the Japanese-German Center Berlin, it is my great honor to welcome you to our virtual symposium on digital innovation for decarbonization. First of all, I would like to thank Professor BARDT from the German Economic Institute Cologne and Dr. SCHULZ from Fujitsu in Tokyo for the pleasant and smooth cooperation in this project, a cooperation on the major topic of digitization, which we see of high relevance for taking the bilateral Japanese-German partnership to a next level. Our organizations have therefore together driven forward this topic since several years, I was told since decades. Let me concretely mention a symposium on digital work skills, productivity and growth, which we jointly held in Tokyo in 2018, and a symposium on digital skills, artificial intelligence and agile work styles for innovation in Berlin in 2019. In 2020, a symposium on the new normal, new mobility and the future of the city took place in a combined analog and digital version that was actually our first hybrid symposium at JDZB, hybrid because in 2020, due to the pandemic, we, like so many others, were suddenly forced to deal with the issue of digitization ourselves with regard to our own formats and work style. At this point, please allow me to say a few words about our organization. The JDZB was founded back in 1985 when the Japanese government offered to make use of a building, namely their former and now again current embassy in Berlin Tiergarten. After some intense consultations, it was decided that the German side was to provide the initial foundation capital, and both sides were to equally share the running costs for a bilateral independent foundation, the Japanese-German Center Berlin. In the meantime, after the German reunification, we moved to a nice spacious building in Berlin-Dahlem. And as you can all see here, we consistently include the virtual world in our action space. But the aim of the center has not changed. Our purpose is to promote and deepen German, Japanese, and international exchange at the levels of business, science, culture, society, and politics. And we do that by regularly organizing a wide range of exchange programs, courses, and cultural events, by providing a platform for informal encounters, for example, during regular networking salons, and last but not least, organizing numerous symposiums and seminars providing an in-depth view on all those fascinating topics of mutual Japanese-German interest, always with a high potential for cooperation. So today we will have a closer look on innovations in the sector of digitization along the entire value chain and learn how this can contribute to the decarbonization of our societies in the interest of future generations. Let me say that Japan and the EU have formed a very close alliance in this field, and they act hand in hand, especially now against the backdrop of the terrible war in the Ukraine. Just recently at the EU-Japan summit, the leaders of the European Union and Japan released a joint statement to announce that the EU-Japan digital partnership has been launched. Now I'm citing, in order to advance cooperation on a wide range of digital issues to foster economic growth and achieve a sustainable society through an inclusive, sustainable, human-centric digital transformation based on our common values. I'm very much looking forward to the input from our experts zooming in from Japan and Germany today. And I would like to thank the speakers for the comprehensive preparation and taking time to share their knowledge and thoughts. I'm really expecting a deep dive, so to say, into the topic. And last but least, I would like to thank everyone for their participation. I'm very much looking forward, especially also to the discussion with the audience. So let us please learn from each other, let us inspire each other, and have an enjoyable virtual symposium. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. We now start with the introduction on digital potentials for decarbonization. It is my pleasure to introduce the first speaker and our cooperation partner, Dr. Martin SCHULZ, Chief Policy Economist at Fujitsu Limited in Tokyo. He's a renowned expert on the impact of digitalization, government policies, and corporate strategies. And we are really to have him kick off this event right now. So Martin, please.
Vivi, thank you so much for the introduction. As you already pointed out, I'm a chief economist at Fujitsu in Tokyo. We are Japan's largest IT service provider. So basically, we are working across industry. And as an IT company, we are deeply interested in sustainability, in environmental issues. It's part of our heart and of our purpose. So we are really interested in how can we contribute to digitalization. I would like to share my screen, but I need to get this unlocked on your side so that I can share. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, thank you. I will just get this up and going. Wait a second. Do you have my screen full screen now?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, digital potentials for sustainability. I will have a look at how as well Europe and Asia are pointing to some difficulties. But first, the start line where our talk starts today, decarbonization. On the left side, you see that we already have, well, some success in terms of decarbonization. This is the CO2 over production, over GDP. And indeed, the CO2 that has been used during production has been falling in most countries. In particular, in the UK, where coal was replaced by cheap gas from the North Sea, then by a move towards more services from a production-based economy, and finally using the gains towards moving towards more towards renewable energy. The world, however, the success has been rather limited. Even in the OECD, the gains are limited within 10–20% of overall more efficiency. CO2 emissions overall, this is where we know that you need to go, not from relative decoupling, like on the left side, we need to go towards absolute decoupling. We need to get the CO2 emissions down, and the track record here is rather terrible. On the world global scale, because the global economy is growing, CO2 emissions still have been going up. Even on the OECD level, it is very limited what we have achieved. Emerging countries are increasing. The UK, an outliner here again, but we cannot easily copy that case, and that is one of the first important lessons. Everybody's special. Everybody needs to build their own track towards decarbonization. What we know is that low carbon production, well, it hasn't been enough. The data are very clear. Production shift towards services, like in the UK and most of our economies are doing, doesn't help as much because, well, we might be more digital, we might be more services oriented, but the production of t-shirts, our things that we are using, the material goods, are still almost the same, and they are being done in emerging countries. So we just have a shift towards inefficiency, actually, because these economies produce on a less efficient level. So that doesn't help much as well. Digitalization, where we are in, digitalization is brilliant. And when you watch a Netflix movie, it uses less energy than when you move to the cinema and get in, and everything needs to be transported. But basically, digitalization is just an augmentation. It is just an additional services and an additional value. It doesn't replace much. So that helps, very limited as well. Finally, low growth. Well, so far the world is growing. If we would grow less, like during the pandemic, we see a major drop in terms of CO2, but very few people actually want that. So this is not the way to go. We learned quite a bit in terms of what works, but many of those things that work are not too welcome. One thing is low carbon production. Yes, that can actually, it didn't work so far, it can. But that means CO2 prices need to go up, either through trading with a price or through taxes. There is very little way around it. In terms of the global shift of production, we need to trade, we need to have CO2 prices globally. This is very difficult to introduce, and this is where we have to do a lot of work. Then the digital contribution. Digitalization, as I pointed out, is an additional value added. It helps. It doesn't have an absolutely direct impact on CO2 reduction, but digitalization leads to transformation, to innovation in our societies. When we innovate, when we transform our societies towards a more digital way of doing things, with platforms, with digital trade, we can actually piggyback the CO2 gains on top of that. Meaning, if we change anyway, if we transform and we want to reduce CO2, then we can combine these two goals. And this is where digital transformation comes in. We change. While we change, we need to have this additional goal. We need to be focused on it, and then it works. Finally, sustainability. We need value sharing here. We need to support the emerging countries. They suffer the burdens, basically. So we need to support them directly. Also, people who are affected by the higher costs that higher CO2 costs will bring, need the support. Otherwise, they become disinclined. Otherwise, they might not be supportive for the overall policy goals, and we cannot do much. So I've been looking into the different Green Deals, New Deals in Europe, in Asia, and the results are a bit sobering in terms of what we actually know what needs to be done. The EU Green Deal is a really mixed bag. I've just looked into where is the money, where are the money flows? It goes through the budget, it goes through different programs and so on. It is very hard to figure out. I put this down here if you want to check it out later. The main message here is when we look into the Recovery and Resilience Fund, which is just over the next 7 years, much more clear in terms of the overall Green Deal. It is a lot of money. 40% goes into green. This is good. But only 25% has an impact on efficiency. So on really CO2 reductions. The rest is innovation, more technology, and so on. It is a little bit lofty. And then the digital part, about 20%, that is not so bad, but it is also not directed towards green goals. You see the overlap between the two is very limited. It is much stronger on the social side, which is positive, which will hopefully help everybody to remain on board. When we look towards Japan and Japan's green growth policy, the picture is very different. Japan looks on efficiency, Japanese government coffers are empty. It's an aging society with high costs on social security, the main problem of the government. So the idea here is we need to be as efficient, as low cost as possible. Clear targets are there, but it is not very clear how they can be achieved. Investment into new technologies, investment into, well, green digitalization or anything is extremely limited. This is very low. And the digital goals are more on a general level. Society 5.0, moving there gradually. Now, these two need to come together, but we are not there yet. When we look at Korea, a much still more strongly growing economy, we have a very different picture. Korea is very modern in its policy approach, and it has probably the clearest New Deal of any country. It has a digital New Deal, it has a Green New Deal, and it has a Human New Deal. All of them very clearly defined. In Korea, a very digital economy, the strongest focus is on digitalization, not so much on the Green Deal. That is clear in the numbers. Also, what's in the bag is a little bit, well, it makes sense on the Green New Deal transformation of energy mobility, but mobility mostly goes into cars, supporting the car industry, turning towards EVs. And on the digital side, even healthcare is part of the package. So it's not entirely clear how things are going. And the track record on the right side of Korea is actually terrible in terms of CO2 emissions reduction. So the government will have to show a lot over the next years how they use this modern approach towards having an impact. When we look into Southeast Asia more closely, emerging countries, developing countries, the picture is very different, of course. I just noted here in this, which looks a little bit here like this curve. This is the GDP per capita from the richest countries, OECD countries on the right side, towards Southeast Asia on the left side. So India, Myanmar, Bangladesh on the very left side. And as you can see, the blue line, that is the supporting environment. What governments can do for green deals, green innovation is very, very limited. It goes down together with the income in these countries. However, when we look at the digital side, that is the red line. That is the digital readiness of the different economies. And many of the poor Asian economies, they have megacities with a young population, all with their smartphones, all very digital, and many companies that are focusing on digitalization and that are very open towards new projects that make sense. As you can see, the performance in terms of environmental impact, emissions, and green industry coming up is actually much better than you would expect when you just look at the income levels and the overall support of the government. So from the private side, a lot is happening. What that means as a lesson is we need to disintegrate these complex packages where everything is put together, like in the EU, the twin challenge, green and digital, we solve it together. We better keep it separate. We need to be clear in terms of what is our digital strategy that needs to focus on innovation. If we have innovation, we need to link it to our decarbonization goals. And this is just a link, it's not the same thing, and to sustainability. So we need to have a digital innovation focus, and that should be helped and linked to green efficiency and sustainability transformation. In industry, that is very clear to us. This is, for example, what Fujitsu is doing when we are decarbonizing. So we use our EcoTrack platform, an environmental database where all the data of what we are using in terms of energy, CO2 are put in. Then we have a green management system that is ISO standardized, which is very clear in terms which steps to do. And that is being linked to our supply chain. So far, 140 suppliers are taking part of it. You think that that's not much, but these are big companies. Actually, 60,000 smaller companies are linked to that. And what it means that the entire supply chain gets integrated in terms of new governance, the purpose of getting really CO2 down. Employees are getting engaged. Our employees are all after and looking that things are working. It provides transparency and it integrates the data we need in the future for trading. I will basically stop here with one technology that might have, from our perspective, one of the strongest impacts in the future: blockchains. They don't have the best reputation right now because of digital coins, bitcoins, and so on, which go up. In industry, they are used for secure exchange of information, accounting of CO2, energy, machine data. This is where smart contracts can account for what we are doing, show it very transparent, and make it possible to trade this across supply chains. That helps a circular economy to be developed from an industry side, and it helps in terms of overall project. I will stop here because my colleague Fujimoto-san can explain this so much better with so much more beautiful slides than I have. The circular economy, Professor BARDT is pointing out. I just wanted to give you an input in terms of how we can move and what we can do, and where probably the technology potentials on the digital side are to have a major impact on our economies in the future. That would be my story for today.
Well, thank you so much, Martin. And now I welcome our next speaker and also cooperation partner, Professor Dr. Hubertus BARDT. He is Managing Director and Head of Research at the German Economic Institute in Cologne, and also visiting lecturer at RFH University of Applied Sciences Cologne and Heinrich Heine University in Düsseldorf. Thank you so much, Professor BARDT, for your kind support and for the introduction that you're going to give us now.
Yes, thank you very much, and it's up to me to say thank you for that wonderful cooperation. And so thanks very much, Ms. Holtgrün, Martin Schulz, thank you very much. And I also would like to include my colleague Adriana NELIGAN into the thanks, who's the true expert in this topic and have very much in preparing this session and this day. Martin Schulz, I'm always very pleased and always very exciting to see your slides and your presentations, and I would like to add a few aspects that result from our research. And so our starting point in our analysis was resource efficiency. So it has not been, in that kind of analysis, not been digitalization and decarbonization, but we were starting looking at resource efficiency as one driver. And you've also mentioned the decoupling of resources and prosperity. So resource efficiency is one driver of economic growth on the one hand side, and of decarbonization on the other hand side. So what do we mean with resource efficiency? It's using less material, it's using it multiple times, and it's substituting one more scarce resource or one more carbon intensive resource by alternatives. And then we have to look, and we see many examples today, have to look at processes and product design. So it's not only a question of how to organize the process within the company or between the companies with digital tools, for example. It's also about how to design the products, make it more durable, make it repairable, make it recyclable, and all this together is what we are talking about when we mean resource efficiency. There's a close link, and that was the core of our analysis, between digitalization and resource efficiency. And we very often use samples of companies and surveys, ask them what are specific advantages or disadvantages. And in this case, we asked them, what are the three main advantages in why do you use digitalization for resource efficiency? So what's the reason to use digital tools beyond the fact that everything is going to be digital, and that's one of the main sources of technical progress right now. In the manufacturing industry, so companies producing really things, tangible things, the main reason was cost reduction. It was not an environmental target. It was not doing something good for the society or the global environment. It was cost reduction. So very, very core business perspective that helped to use digital tools to improve resource efficiency. The second one was better transparency in the manufacturing process, and the third one was consumer proximity, so better interaction with consumers. And in the services, that last part, that interaction with consumers was the most important driver. Data topics, second one, and cost reduction, again, the third one. So cost reduction means there's a very strong lever to improve efficiency. As always, efficiency is being driven in a market economy by cost and by scarcity, and that's also the case here, that if a technology is able to reduce costs and provides additional advantages, it can help to reduce the use of materials, increase efficiency of resource use, and therefore in the end reduce carbon emissions as well. We try to measure the effects and try to analyze how many companies, or how intensive are companies active in becoming more digital, and how big is their success to reduce emissions, reduce the use of materials. So how big are the savings? And we see that the more a company uses digital resource efficiency measures, so here on the chart from the left to the right, the more they are able to reduce their footprint and to reduce the use of critical or expensive or carbon intensive materials. So that's the bars. The more that the bars show the companies that provide or that are very successful in saving materials, and we see here that the more they use digital tools, the more they are innovative in that sense, the better they are in reducing their footprints and being more carbon efficient. We also tried to do a macroeconomic analysis and try to figure out how big is that effect, how big is that savings effect that comes with using digital tools to improve resource efficiency. And we've seen that companies that are using digital tools and doing that in a more advanced way have saved about 5% of their material costs and about 8% of their energy costs during the last 5 years. You can discuss if that's a lot or not, but it's much more than those companies that are lagging behind in digitalization, where the savings has been just 1%. Sorry, the other way around. We have an effect of 5 and 8% in general, and 1% on top with digitalization. So there is an effect. It's not the only effect. We have an incentive. Materials have become more expensive. Energy prices have gone up significantly over the last years, and there's a lot of political pressure as well to reduce, and market pressure as prices are high, to reduce energy costs and material costs as well. So there's a big effect, but that can be enhanced and can be increased by another percentage point through digitalization. It's not a revolution in that case, but it improves very much the ability to reduce. And that might not sound like a lot for a single company. 1 percentage point, well, yes, that's not, maybe not too much. It is something, especially if we take into account that it's just a limited number of companies who is really on the forefront of digitalization and using these tools. If we sum that up and look at the total potential we have, it's about 10 billion euros that can be saved through additional digitalization in resource efficiency. There are different companies doing different things. We have some a smaller number of advanced companies with very advanced technologies to use models and simulation technologies, use multimodal assistance systems, and so on. But there's a small fraction. We see just 5% or up to 5% of the companies using these technologies. That's are the more and the really digitalized ones. The beginning is data collection, standard interfaces, digital applications for material or energy savings. So that's what the beginners are doing. And there's still a huge potential of companies doing nothing or doing next to nothing. So we are just in the beginning of a situation or of that progress here. The main, and I've come to the conclusions. I have already seen that Philippa Holtgren turned on her video, signaling me I have to come to the end. So we see progress, but we also see obstacles. There's it's too complicated, still too expensive, or support is not available to implement technology in the companies. So like software, like data collection, it's still complicated, especially for medium-sized companies. They lack of the competences of fear. That's their main problem. And we already see that half of the companies, at least in Germany, say, well, we are not making more progress in digitalization because we do not really see how to do it and do not really see the advantage for us. And if we don't overcome that problem, we can't earn the benefits in terms of better sustainability and better resource efficiency. And that's our final slide, also then have difficulties to come to not only resource efficiency, but also to lower emissions. And we see those companies using digitalization to a high degree, and therefore having the opportunity to come to a higher material savings are also those who are in the end, well, coming to better results in terms of emissions. So higher digitalization, lower resource use, and lower emissions go hand by hand. And I'm very glad that today we see a lot of examples how that began. See a lot about the forerunners in this process, and hope that we can see more progress also in the medium-sized companies and in the big number of companies in the future. So thank you very much, and I'm really looking forward to the next parts of our day.
Well, thank you so much, Professor BARDT. And of course, you're absolutely right. You know, switching on my camera is my tool to say politely, time is almost up. So now we directly proceed to the next part of the program, to 3 experts' presentations on innovation, smart and sustainable value chains. And we first welcome Professor Dr. Jens STRÜKER, Professor of Business Informatics and Digital Energy Management at the University of Bayreuth and head of the Fraunhofer Blockchain Lab and Deputy Scientific Director of the Center for Finance and Information Management and the branch Business and Information Systems Engineering of the Fraunhofer FIT. Professor STRÜKER, it's my great pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. Yeah, let me add some points here. I'm a professor for digital energy management, as you said, at the University of Freiburg, and also work for the Fraunhofer Society. And there I'm also head of the Fraunhofer Blockchain Lab. And personally, I have a background in information systems and economics. So, and my research focus is on real-time energy markets and enabling technologies such as IoT, AI, and of course, blockchain. So, due to the war in Ukraine, the EU has adapted their fundamental assumptions of the energy policy over the last 2 weeks and 2 months, 3 months. And this has already led to a recalibration of the energy policy triangle, as we call that. And that is between the trade-offs of security of supply, economic efficiency, and sustainability. So all of the sudden, energy independency is a primacy again. And in order to reduce now the dependency of fossil energies, policymakers have, and this is really what I convinced of, is they have to accelerate the electrification in the European economy. And of course, I think also in a couple of more states worldwide, of course. So the really billion-dollar question here is, how can we speed up this transformation process towards electrify everything or almost everything? Recently, my team and I, we published a white paper with European TSO. This means these are the big companies who are responsible for the electricity grids, the big ones here. And in that white paper, we focused on the decisive role of digital technologies for transforming our energy system to CO2 neutrality. And I would add now that digital technologies are also here the key to get us on the fast track for electrification. And what we really need is an energy system that is digital from end to end. And this brings me back now to the situation today. When we look at the actual energy system in Europe today, we see a couple of reasons why the energy system is still not very digital integrated. Or more to the point, we have severe digital gaps here. Two examples. We will now have installed smart meters, or we will not have installed smart meters in Europe by 2030. This means we have no data, and accordingly, we do not know what is happening behind the meter. This is how we call that. And we also cannot interact with systems behind smart meters, with all the assets there in a digital automated way. And that is, if you own a PV rooftop installation and a battery, you cannot switch within seconds or minutes from own generation to grid services to an aggregator who might sell your flexibility at a wholesale or regional market here. And actually in Germany, you have to write a letter still today. You have to write a letter, and if and only if you are allowed to participate in these market segments. So, and I'm eager to learn about the situation in Japan right now. I've been to Japan 2 times over the last 10 years, but I still would like to learn about the current situation there. Or as a grid operator, you cannot find out how many EVs in Germany or in the European Union are actually charging within the grid right now. So how can we fill this digital gap or these digital gaps and build a future-proof system? Our answer to that is we think that the way how can we fill these digital gaps in the first place is we have to get to really down to the device level here. So we have to connect them. And the common denominator in a couple of projects I've here is really we have to connect the dots, and this means the market participants and their devices, they have to be verified in real time. This is our common denominator in all our projects here. And we are convinced that otherwise we cannot ensure an interaction that is secure, dynamic, and minimize transaction costs here. We think one of the key building blocks for an end-to-end digitalized energy system are so-called machine identities. And let me speak about these machine identities. We think that these machine identities are becoming a so important focal point in the emerging real-time energy economy. We think that the lack of digital identity proofs here at the machine level, this is currently one of the most pressing obstacles, at least if we want to digitalize and electrify more and more sectors here. So we need machine identities because the internet had a defect right from the beginning when it comes to a true identity layer. You simply do not know who's participating. Maybe some of you remember that famous cartoon with a dog in front of a personal computer, ordering dog food and saying that nobody knows he's a dog. In a world with billions of devices connected to the internet today, and this is part for the IoT world, the energy world, the industry, digitalized industry systems here. So this means today's simple password management and workarounds for identity management, like these the so-called single sign-on. This is based on traditional big internet platforms. These all are not feasible anymore, not for an Internet of Things world here. So the complexity is simply too huge, and and also the risk is too high here. But we have solutions here. So the last German federal government and the European Commission, they have recognized this problem, and many people are all actually working on at full speed here to establish an ecosystem of digital and decentralized identities. Maybe you came across this approach by what is known as the European Digital Identity Initiative. So in scope of this decentralized approach, you want users to manage their identities and certificates based on in a self-sovereign way. And this is so-called self-sovereign identity, SSI, is maturing very quickly and being tested in many public and private sector projects. We alone are involved in, I think, 7 or 8 big projects here right now. And the key takeaway is here, the verifier of an identity is directly able to verify the correctness of a certificate. That is the claim of a party, person, or any device. So this SSI makes use also, we already heard that before, of blockchain technology. This is very important here. If there are questions, of course, I can go deeper here, but it's always critical to get too deep here in this hole then. And so I think for this time, this is from a technical level, this is enough. This SSI approach, and this is also very important information here, has already led to a standard by the World Wide Web Consortia. So it's not an academic fantasy here. If we want to close now the digital gaps in the energy sector, we think there's no way around these kind of machine identities, because at some point we have to bring different machine identities and also personal identities together. We have to link them in a verifiable way. This is big, or would be a big contribution to end-to-end digitalization. And the underlying very important paradigm here is don't trust, verify. Trust today in the sector means manual work, errors. In a world with billions of machines in the energy sector, this problem really urgently here needs a solution. I think you can see that. So what we really need are machine identities which work cross-sectoral and without third parties, in the sense of our dominating platforms we are all used to over the last years. Yeah, and I will walk you now very quickly through a couple of examples of projects we do and did with industry here. And the first one is exactly the solution to the problem I already mentioned. So how can you switch a device between different functions or segments in the energy markets? So we need digital identities for market integrations. Next week, we will present in Berlin a big project there. We finalized that, and with 22 companies and the German Energy Agency. And the idea here was how can we find solution that we can assets can switch smoothly from own consumption to ancillary services to trading systems. For this, you need to verify the assets, or at least the DSO or TSO, transmission grid operator, or a distribution grid operator. They have to know all the assets there. This is very important in critical infrastructures. The next example is tracking. So due to the Paris Agreement, CO2 emission, of course, will become more and more the leading indicator for the decision-making in the energy industry. And that does mean that just generating and integrating renewable energy the impact of CO2 will extend far beyond that. So we believe that in 5, maybe 10 years, the new normal for companies and maybe for households is really to manage their consumption and production also according to the CO2 intensity of inputs, material, energy, whatever. And that is according to a CO2 budget. A couple of weeks ago, we have published a study on or a month ago, sorry, on the use of digital CO2 certificates in companies. And one of the key results here is very clear. Companies do need more CO2 information data. And and let's give an example here with electricity. Today's as an important input, of course, if we talk about decarbonization, today's guarantees of origin are not sufficient to provide this information. So guarantees of origin of electricity. Just to give you an example, with GOs, these guarantees of origin, they are simply not feasible anymore. Here you see a picture of Norway. In Norway, citizens know nothing about the sale of green electricity and think they are buying electricity from hydroelectric power plants. Germany energy suppliers buy green electricity from Norway or the certificates from Norway and can therefore offer green electricity in Germany. Accordingly, German citizens think they buy green electricity, and this is double counting. We have now adapted the rules a little bit here in order to get rid of at least some of the typical double counting problems, but still it's very problematic in a sense. And maybe we can talk about that later, because there's also a very important big issue behind that. The EU ETS, or carbon trading system, with CO2 on the one side and the greenhouse gas protocol, they are not totally interoperable. So there are a lot of problems here. And we have to solve that. And we think that one of the solutions here, of course, is primary data. Yeah, but it's not all about double counting here. Also very important is the possibility of differentiate the CO2 intensity of heat, hydrogen, electricity, natural gas, and of course LNG. One reason is simply the gigantic gap of 100% green electricity. And I will come to an end in 1 minute, of course. So one reason is, as I mentioned, the big electricity gap we have when it comes to 100% green electricity. When we want to electrify all the different industry sectors. And the other one is building a new system infrastructure from scratch. I'm speaking of hydrogen, for instance. We simply cannot wait for enough green electricities to start. But this is what we do actually right now in Germany. This is simply irresponsible. Japan, I think, was much smarter in this way. So in a nutshell, our vision is we need primary data. Remember, don't trust, verify, because a simple guess is not sufficient and future-proof for many reasons here at this level. So we want to give companies really the choice to reduce their carbon footprint on real data. And we have a lot of examples here how we can do that. And maybe in our discussions, we can come back to that. So we speak here really about the next level emission accounting reporting based on real data. And I think this is very promising. Overall, we are investigating these digital identities for assets in a couple of projects, as I mentioned, and we think this has a big future here. To sum up, digital technologies are first the key to get us on the fast track for electrification. We think that data exchange infrastructure in Europe and maybe in other countries as well, we think it's very, very important to combine them, to get them together. So we have to integrate here different master data registry, data spaces for transaction data, like Gaia-X, how we call it in Europe. And of course, decentralized digital identities are a promising way here to bridge the current digital gap, all these gaps I showed you, and enable necessary digital certificates when it comes to CO2. So this was my impulse, and now I'm more than happy to give over to you back. And thank you so much. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you so much, Professor STRÜKER. For the next talk, we are delighted to welcome Dr. Marta MARMIROLI, General Manager for the Power System ICT Design Department at the Energy System Center of Mitsubishi Electric Corporation. Dr. MARMIROLI particularly works on developing and delivering solutions for management and control of digital energy resources and electricity market. Dr. MARMIROLI, it's great to have you here today. Please take over for the next 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. As I was kindly introduced, my name is Marta MARMIROLI. I'm based in Japan. And today I would like to introduce some approach that can be utilized to increase or to optimize decarbonization using digital innovation. My approach is a bit different from the previous presentation. I will be a bit more, let's say, physical. So for me, in digital innovation is included the power conditioners, so batteries or PVs that are connected using digital device in a certain sense to the grid. But before to go on specific technology, I would like to think with you about what is the real needs and what is the trend that we're seeing. And basically, I'm speaking about renewables, integration of renewables in distribution resources. I think when we look at these needs, we have to be careful that it's not that everybody have the same point of view. So there is a society point of view, there is a developers or owner of resources, let's say people that invest in these resources. And there is, from an electricity point of view, the network operator, people that are trying to supply stable electricity to everybody. Developers and owner of resources mainly are looking to a stable way to be, how can I say, refound or be sure that their funding is not, is in a safe place. So a very stable income, possibly more than one source of income, and possibly be able to expand their business in the future. Otherwise, because mainly of this renewables that we're speaking about to reduce carbon footprint in the world are not really stable or forecasting. They make some impact on the networks, and making some impact on the network will affect all the other people that are connected that are not the supplier of this kind of green electricity. So basically what the network operator would like to do is to be able to monitor and control these devices or these resources and give them the possibility to enter without making problems. So not be necessary, for example, to prevent congestion, to curtail some resources, or not allow the people to interconnect with the grid without causing fluctuation, voltage problem, frequency problem. I would like to discuss with you a few of the possible solutions. I think that there is no single solution. It's not possible that we have one approach and it's good for everybody all the time. So we need some small approaches that all integrated together will make everything working better. And for today, I will propose basically 3 things that I think can be very important. The first one is I'm going to explain is something that actually in Germany is used from a long time, not specifically for renewable or distributed resources, but in general for resources that were available, but they were not able to access the market. So VPP, partial power plant. And to increase the visibility for network operation, I will speak a bit about electric powered digital energy platform, so a platform that can allow them to get the data and to control this data, including DARMs. And how can we use a bit more local these resources so that we have less losses, we have a more distributed control, and we increase the value of these resources locally. I think that from a decarbonization point of view, a society point of view, it's very important to have all the people involved and be cautioned what they're doing. So having community and local people more active is a very important point. So first of all, VPP, I think you already have a clear idea of the concept. This is just to, how can I say, remember about that. And I think it's very important to make all these small owners or people that operate or owns devices to be able to access to other level market, including kilowatt hours, so energy market or flexibility or a reserve market. To do this, in some way, it's necessary the coordination. So a VPP, an aggregator, is the place where it can get really all this data together and manage it in an optimal way. To have an efficient or a good operating VPP, of course, a good platform is very important. So here is just a picture to show you that the aggregator with many functions, including forecasting, planning, control function, need to interface with many other systems outside. This is based on the Japanese market structure, but you can see on the left, there is a wholesale power exchange, JPX. There is a balancing reserve market. There is an entity called OCTO that is coordinating the transmission network. There are other people on the right, mainly the transmission owner, that are asking for services sometimes during the day, and the aggregator need to speak with all these people to make the resource really efficient. To do so, we need to get the data. How can we really get the field data? The previous speaker was pointing out quite explicitly that at this time, just with the smart meter, we don't have visibility under that. And we need to speak with each device. It may be an EV car, it can be a PV, it can be a heat pump, but a single smart meter is not enough to give all this information. Here is just an example of a small device, a really small device that have several interfaces so that can be connected with many type of devices. Probably you know that in Japan there is a standard for domestic application called Econet, and it's a bit tricky because it's only implemented in Japan, but it's one of the options that we have, and we integrate in with our small device that is connected with several equipment. Our objective, total objective, is really to have an efficient system. So we don't want that this, how can I say, digital pieces in data collection consume a lot of energy. So having small, really efficient, almost no electricity consuming device is another very important point, we think. And when we are able to get all this information, the next step is how we control it. There is a word that probably you are aware about, is DERMS, Distributed Energy Resource Management. And basically there are utility or network operator that own and use this system. It's, again, interfacing with several players, several things, including the aggregator, getting data from the transmission and distribution automation system, smart meter, put all together and try to decide which of the devices at what time can be controlled to improve the efficiency sometimes, or to reduce the utilization of some distribution equipment. The main objective are, I would say, basically two. The first one is to reduce or optimize the investment for the equipment on the network. And the second one is really to utilize our resources as much as we can, to try to avoid to curtail some of the resources during some day of the year. I was speaking about the local utilization. I mean, if you look at this picture, probably you are thinking that it's not really local. The previous speaker was mentioning about difficulty to trace where our renewables is really coming from, if it's really what we are using, CO2-free, or if actually we are counting twice the same CO2-free electricity. And one option that we are speaking with several stakeholders in the market in Japan is, for example, for one single company with many factories around, put together all the resources to try to understand which electricity is going where during the day. Another important thing is we have to try to do it as close to real time as we can. I know that several of the program are yearly based. So in 1 year, you can say, I use this much electricity, I have this much CO2 reduction or renewable production, so I'm carbon neutral. Actually, this is not sustainable for all the future, because if somebody is doing that, there is always somebody else that probably is using or producing some electricity that is not clean. We need to make this target as close as possible to real time. So we are proposing, for example, an industry player with more than one factory or places to exchange on the real time the electricity locally to make it as close as possible to the target that they have. Well, basically 100% renewable or no carbon resources. The last solution, or I would say solution that I would like to discuss today is batteries. I know that there is a lot of discussion and a lot of merit and demerit to use batteries. But if you want really integrate renewables, I think battery is one of the best solution. The discussion may come out because of the impact on the environment for the battery itself, and because of the increase of losses. Of course, if we store our electricity in the battery sometimes during the day and we take it out in another time, we have losses that are like some electricity we cannot really use for the objective we have. However, battery performance increased a lot in the recent time, and we can build a system that really is approaching the integration of the grid in the best way. So we can really coordinate the output of renewables, the batteries, in the objective of our grid. So it may be that is not that you have to consume all the electricity all the time. Maybe that the battery can support some grid services as reserve or peak cut, or either voltage support for the grid if it's necessary. And so that's why we point a lot of attention on the battery system. And as we were mentioning at the starting of this presentation, I think the battery is a digital solution to the decarbonization itself. I mean, the battery is a digital device, not digital in the terms of data, but digital because it can be controlled digitally from the grid point of view. Here is just a list of several projects that I was involved, and it was really interesting, and I could study a lot about the problems that can solve the batteries, but also the challenges that we may have, especially when we come to the end of life of the battery itself, or the utilization of the battery during all the life of that. And I wanted to share today 2 examples. The first one is a real microgrid, because we are speaking about 2 small islands connected with a transmission line. And the local government wanted to really increase the renewables. They want to make the system almost independent from fossil fuel for several reasons, not only for decarbonization, but also because being a small island in a difficult place to achieve, the fuel supply can be delayed, so the island can suffer of lackage of fuel itself. So independency was another important point for these 2 islands. Integrating different kind of batteries, NAS battery and lithium-ion, now they are able to have more than half of their consumption produced by renewables. In this system is like in this picture, there are batteries, some actually 2 power stations that use fossil fuel, and a lot of renewable all distributed around. So it may happen that some part have a blackout because of weather condition, but some other can stay on only using renewables and battery system. The second example or record that I would like to share today is a completely different size. The idea was to show that batteries can be integrated for really small system, but also for incredibly big system. In this slide, I'm showing a system that is 240 megawatt battery that support 600 megawatt wind turbine, and they're connected to the grid. There are a lot of requirements to be connected that include that the power cannot change during the day or can change very, very few. And in the system is now under development. It will be connected short, and it's something I want to speak with you. The last slide for today is just an overview of all this approach. So in my division now, we are working, I would say, on all the technologies that go from smart meters, so data acquisition, managed data for customer management, supply and demand management, integrating renewable, and control all the system. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward for the discussion after the other presenters.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marmiroli. And now, last but not least, we hear the presentation by Mr. Shingo Fujimoto, Project Manager at the Data and Security Research Laboratory of Fujitsu Limited, and also leader of Fujitsu's development team of Hyperledger Cactus. Mr. Fujimoto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, introduction. Hello, everyone, and good morning and konnichiwa. My name is Shingo Fujimoto of the Fujitsu. Today, I'm very honored to present to the speak regarding to the joint project with IHI and Fujitsu. The title is Solution for the Environmental Value Trading. So let's start the beginning. So at the very beginning, let me introduce myself briefly and introduce that I'm the project manager in the data and security research. It means to the lab in Fujitsu. However, I had a double the role in the public, like a governing board of the member of the Hyperledger Foundation that was known as the OSS community in the blockchain area. And I also had another responsibility of the research teams as a leader of the Fujitsu blockchain research teams. And our team is heavily involved to the several blockchain talks with the customers who had a very innovative ideas. So today I will introduce one of them. That was the environmental value trading will be introduced. So the first of all, let me explain about the background of the issue we need to be solved. As another the speakers talked, today we are focus on the very specific the problem, like we need to be achieved to the SDG goals, particularly for the environmental things. So as you know, the Japanese government set to the very hard to achieve goals, and we need to some sort of the solution need to be delivered in practical way. So we think that our solution could be one of the solution for that problem. Probably that is a recapturing of the sum of the U. I will explain to the mechanism to how the carbon offset trading works. So that is not the mechanism for the buying or cheating to the carbon footprint. Actually for that is helping to the investment for the replacing or improvement of the existing the infrastructure. This figure is showing to such a mechanism like we had let's assume to some of the very old boiler was there, and we need to be improved better one that generate to the less CO2 gas. So but that actually required to invest for those replacement. So the carbon offset trade is mechanism to help that. So first of all, we need to be calculate accurately for how much CO2 was reduced, and that was reported to the issuer for the credit. That is depend on the country. In Japan, the J credit is one of the organization or mechanism for to submit the report. And that case, as a return back to such a report, we will acquire to the issued carbon credit. That will be the freely trade between the players. However, those credit has to be to be some sort of the consistency in the market. We will most of the country provide to the marketplace named to the carbon offset marketplace will be there, and that was a place to sell and buy such a carbon environmental values. And when the company who need to be inquired such a offset, like to achieve to their own goals, they pay the money to the credit producer to help them. That is a mechanism for the carbon offset trade. So our goal will be how those the money will be linked to that improvement. That is a challenge for this schema. So let me explain about another aspect of the challenge in the carbon offset trade. So because of as I said in the previous slide, we need to be very many players in this schema. So we need to some sort of the trust between the players and role suite and the several players as a occupancy. So we think that those problems can be can be explained to the three aspects like verifiability and governance and sustainability. So verifiability is because of even that we can trust to each other, some of the cheating is actually exists. So it is better for the good players to the way which enables to verify or prove themselves by the third-party verifications. And another important aspect is governance. Because of the, in the previous slide, as you see, there is a many players, and some of them are double national, the functionalities, and some of them are some of the players have the same roles. So however, we need to be some sort of the consistency in the worldwide. So it means the governance for the or enforcement of the certain agreed rule is very important. And third one is rarely discussed in this context. However, for the some of the SDG initiative is very difficult for the financial aspect. That is not good because of we need to be to achieve such a goal in the long-term visions. So I think the sustainability in the economical and mechanism is also needed. So considering to those three the requirement, we think the blockchain can be the solution for them. The approach will be very simple. We will prepare some of the infrastructure to record the carbon footprint that can be matchable for each players like corporations or organizations. And we also reuse the existing the society infrastructure like the JCredit. And we need to be the record or adding to the more the verifiable value using to the blockchain technologies. Additionally, we need to be interconnect them and the adding to the smart contract, which is a blockchain's technology, the guarantee the more occupancies and reliability. Even the central administrators. So using that technology, we can verify by the third parties, and we also automate some of the trading processes using the smart contract. And also we can check or rely or coexist with the public infrastructure, which was the common the evidence or proof of the trade. So this is our solution as the approach. However, there's a missing piece because of the ordinary blockchain does not have the capability to handle such a complicated smart contract. So we used our solution named connection chain. That was announced in back to the 2017, and that was a generic platform to enabling to the transparency for the blockchain in the work, and we also provide to the secure state management. That was the name to the extended smart contract. And finally, we need to solve the problem for the interoperability because of the many people want to use their own solution as nature. As a last word of the Cactus is one of the project of the Hyperledger Foundations. And currently we are supporting to the 9 platform, including to the Hyperledger Fabric and Ethereum. So that number of the support is growing. So now the situation is getting better because of anyone already have the blockchain can join to such an initiative where they need to be collaborations. So the remarkable the example of our initiative was recently announced with the joint press release with IHI, which is an initiative of the environmental values. the actual work is I previously explained about that. So the IHI, the solution will the generate to the value and bring to the market. And Fujitsu will help to the interwork for the multiple blockchain in the marketplace and the enabling to those value to be traded in security. So but this is just the beginning of our initiative. So we would like to extending to our initiative more wider, or not only the Japan. That we would like to extend it to this initiative to the worldwide. For the case of we need to be because of the carbon offset or the carbon trading will be now executed the Earth-wide. So we better to provide or extend it to those initiatives to the worldwide. As a starting point, Japan and Germany and other countries. That is our the idea of how we would like to contribute to the environmental value trade using our technologies and IHI's technology as a collaborations. So we would like to ask to your audience to join our initiative if you could enough interest on my talks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fujimoto, and thanks to all three experts. We move on right away to the discussion part on how to accelerate decarbonization in Japan and Germany. And I invite the audience once again to raise your virtual hands or to write in the chat for your participation. Actually, we start 6 minutes late, but just a note to the moderator, we can add these minutes at the end. And now I'm glad to introduce to you Dr. Adriana NELIGAN, who kindly agreed to moderate this part. Dr. NELIGAN is a senior economist in the Department of Environment, Energy and Infrastructure at the German Economic Institute and an expert on sustainability, resource efficiency, circular economy and raw materials. And she researches all aspects of a green or greening economy. Dr. NELIGAN, thank you for taking over from here.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. We just had a great session of 5 speakers who gave insightful input for further discussion. To start off, we've got around 40 minutes to discuss with all 5 speakers, and I'd be grateful if all 5 speakers could turn on their camera so that everybody can see them. And what are we going to talk about? Well, the current global challenge is how to become both digital and green. So today, all speakers presented on how digitalization offers new potentials and what solutions are available for moving towards smart and sustainable low carbon value chains. So what we're going to discuss now, how we can raise these potentials and how we can get to an efficient, smart and decarbonized economy. Since we have speakers who both cover the macroeconomic as well as the entrepreneurial view, we should get a good picture on the current state of this issue. So the overall question of today's discussion is, how can we further accelerate smart decarbonization? So I'd be grateful if the audience writes their questions in the chat, and I'm going to have first set a round of questions. And after that, people can raise their hand as well and ask questions directly to the speakers. I'd like to start with a question to Dr. Martin Schulz, who showed us different green policy approaches and relevant digital potentials. And from your speech, I've taken away, well, every country needs an own track of decarbonization. So where do you see the main differences between Asia and Europe concerning becoming both digital and green?
Well, in Europe, there's a wide agreement, perhaps a stronger agreement than in Asia in terms of that we need to move on in terms of the green economy and get things going. And the focus in Europe is very much on, well, reorganization, restructuring the economy. So digital is a comparatively small part. It is increasingly regulated what can be done, and the focus is a little bit less, maybe quite a bit less than in Asia in terms of innovation. And we will need all the innovation we can squeeze out of digital to move on. In Asia, the focus is very much on the digital economies because, well, this is where they are growing with. And the focus is a little bit less on the green side in terms of really restricting, absolute decoupling, because the economies are growing still so much stronger. So it is basically unavoidable that you have more CO2 unless you're extreme. So getting these two approaches together is very important, and we need to do some sharing here. We need to get a little bit more digital and innovation into Europe. Moving on, Asia is not a bad example on that. And on the other hand, we need to have Asia with a strong focus on energy efficiency, and this is where Europe, in terms of the restructuring, can help. We have heard we need to get these two sides together by opening up data, by opening up and connecting not just companies, but the national economies in terms of how CO2 can be traded. And then we need to get this together on a global level. That is not an easy one.
Yeah, if I just may ask another question, you also mentioned in your speech that we need to support emerging countries. So that's what you mean when you talk about we need to get it on a global level. How can we achieve this?
Oh, that is in emerging countries. It is very simple. These countries have so far contributed relatively little to the CO2 output. This is really what the currently industrialized countries have been doing. So what we need to do when we are trying to trade globally and get efficient in terms of our CO2 approaches, we need to support the developing and emerging countries in terms of, well, connecting them to the digital supply chain so that we get an idea where the CO2 is coming from. We shouldn't press them on reducing their CO2 immediately. This is what we have to do first, helping them with the technologies to get into the global value and supply chains. That will probably have the biggest impact on the future.
Oh, thank you very much. Professor BARDT, you presented us some results from a company survey showing the potentials and challenges of digitalization for a resource-efficient and circular economies. So do you think we need digitalization as a prerequisite? It's like we can't do it without it to move towards this transformation or get this transformation done?
Thanks for the question. I just would like to add some or one sentence to what Martin Schulz just said. He's absolutely right, especially if you look at big countries like India. We can't afford having India going the same way as China and having the same increase of emissions. And so therefore, new technologies, smarter technologies must be at place when it comes to economic growth. And in order to well, avoid additional emissions. So is digitalization necessary? Well, if we look at many companies, it's a bit shocking how much resource efficiency potential there is without any sophisticated and very modern digital tools. So very traditional instruments. There's huge amounts of material being wasted in stockpiling, for example. Still very, very well, let's not say basic, but traditional instruments which still have a significant potential. And looking back those 5 years, as I mentioned, 5 percentage points reduction, material consumption reduction through traditional measures, just 1 additional percentage points with digital instruments. So, but that's a backwards perspective. Looking forward, I think the potential of advanced digital technologies is much higher, and that's the key. And there are two ways. One is using that or increasing that potential by developing digital technologies, and the other perspective is making companies more digital. We have a very small number of forerunners of companies that really are redefining their business models, redefining or newly defining all their processes and products and so on. And that's a big potential, of course. And my impression is it's maybe not a direct link. It's not that easily using a technology and therefore having better results ecologically, but it's more it's a mindset of the company. Is it a very innovative one? And then it's innovating in different perspectives. It's innovating their business case, it's innovating in terms of digitalization, and it's innovating in terms of decarbonization.
Thank you. I think I've got a very good question now for Professor STRÜKER, which goes in line with this. You talked about the digital gap in the energy system, that there is still a gap. And I've taken away from your speech 2 statements: don't trust, verify. And the other statement, reduce carbon footprint using real data. So these are kind of 2 main messages you involve. But what are promising instruments here to overcome this digital gap? Can you elaborate on this a bit, please?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for the question. So to start with, I would say decarbonization still is not a CIO topic. Yeah, so that's one of the main issues here. We have energy management. Some companies started to digitalize the energy management. This is one part, but then we have somebody who is responsible for the sustainability reporting, etc., etc. So we have to really to collect a lot of different data within a company, and they are totally interconnected on the semantic level, but on the digital level, on the information systems level, totally different organization structures, there are units there. So this is a problem. And if you look to the on the level on the simple thing like a billing note today. So if somebody makes use today of Excel file to fill in the data, and then you have an ERP system, etc., but it's not end to end. And I think the booster there really is, it has to be, there has to be a kind of pull from the CEO level and then the CIO, and then say, okay, we have to integrate our information systems, because now when it comes to decarbonization and supply chains, etc., we have compliance issues, we have reporting issues there, and suppliers, they need this information. So we have to integrate that, and this, yeah, we need a kind of master plan for that.
So one thing you kind of pointed out now is, I think we also saw in our studies, is that the 2 topics, digitalization and decarbonization, are not taught holistically in the companies, that there is no common strategy. And as long as this is not the case, there won't be any kind of holistic strategies coming to get digitalization together.
And maybe just to add one tiny note here. It's I think still in the mindset in a company today, digitalization still often it's still seen as a kind of, when it comes to decarbonization, it's a bug there, it's a burden. Yeah, we heard about energy efficiency. Of course, people look at blockchain or bitcoins that say, oh, what kind of energy consumption, it's horrible. But on the other side, we have to be very, very clear here. I mean, it's an enabler, digitalization, digital technology. We have to use them. It's a feature, it's an enabler. It's not a burden.
Well, thank you. This kind of leads over really nicely to what Dr. Marmiroli was presenting on concrete several solutions. Like she presented solutions for digital efficiency in electricity production and smart grids. So, and one thing I took from your statement was, well, there is no simple solution. We need a lot of different solutions together to get the big solution. So we can't kind of plan the overall solution, but we have to start like small island projects and get them together. So how do you think we can decarbonize the energy system at a large scale doing this?
Yes, I would start just to connect with the previous question. And I think we need also to go back to another point in to make all this data together and be able to digitalize all the system, we need to measure it. I think that the big problem or challenge that we have, for example, if we are speaking about internet or telecommunication, the data itself, we're already can measure because they are data. When we are speaking about electricity or consumption of heat or all the things that are connected to what we need to decarbonize, we still have this gap between the analog part of the system and the digital part. So this bridge is also a very important piece that people tend to forget. So really, when we have data, of course, technology as blockchain that we were mentioning help a lot, but we have to transform the real power or production or CO2 in data. In this step, actually, we are losing a lot of information. We have to digitalize, so we will have a difference in the time or some error in the measurement. And I think this is a very important point that is still difficult to manage in all the picture. In one of I would say the solution that probably is not the optimal one, but having more digital energy. So not a fire that produce heat, but have power conditioner in the middle that become digital. And so the part for measuring also help. This is an important point. The other total picture is really how can we express or how can we make people think that there is value, the economical value in a different approach, not only cost reduction, not only making things cheaper, but having the right value for one things that can be electricity or can be raw materials for the production. So I think this changing of idea or concept is another very important point.
But change of mindset is
it's
one part which Professor STRÜKER also mentioned before.
Yes.
Basically, everybody can imagine we have to change our attitude towards the ways of production and electricity production, and in particular. Mr. Fujimoto, you showed us solutions for environmental value trading, which I thought was really interesting. So what do you think is the best forward to integrate such digital tools to get a better collaboration framework to achieve decarbonization? So is it also the mindset, or do you have other solutions in addition? I think the mindset is a prerequisite.
Yeah. I have no doubt for the changing the mindset is always necessary. However, to the way I'm mentioning about the technology perspective, I think according to our experience, we think to the integrated too much the too close is always fail. Because of that is not applicable for another way, or when we realize that there's something wrong, we cannot change it. However, we need to be decoupling to such a use case and technology, it allowing to the change for the way. That reasoning is behind how we can maintain those systems for the long term. Because of the decarbonization is long-term visions and goals. So we need to be start right now. However, that is not the right, the best way, may not be the best solutions. So later on, we need to be improved or those solutions. And because of the players is so many, so as a blockchain, as a nature. So I think that we need to be keep to the some sort of the distance from those specific use cases from the design or architectures. I think that is an important point for the integrations, for the decarbonization, for the long-term vision, I think.
So are multiple blockchains the way forward to get to an integrated world? Is that?
Yes, that is the one, the short answer. But I think that the blockchain is one of the solutions. So we could see today some of the solution is not blockchain based. So I do not think that the blockchain is always the right solution. However, to the somewhere decentralized the administrative or some sort of the automation, but that is security trade. That case, blockchain is a good solution at least. But at this moment, the blockchain is still developing or getting better right now. So I think that we need to catch up to those new technology to adapt to or to solve our real problem, not the technical one. To achieve the SDGs. That is our ultimate goal, I believe.
Thank you for this input. So far, I've only seen one question in the chat, so I'd encourage the audience now to either raise their hand, please, and you can direct your question to one or all speakers, depending on how general it is, or just write it into the chat, please. There's one question for Professor STRÜKER during his speech. Annabel Castro wants to know more about the Reliable CO2 Accounting Initiative IDEAL. Can you elaborate on this, please?
Yeah, of course. This is a research project, and what we are doing there is we really give a certificate to a machine that is generating electricity, for instance, and then feed it in to a grid, a distribution grid, and then we have consumption at some point. So then we also give a certificate there. We make use of blockchain there, of SSI, as I mentioned, and then it's possible to do this very in compliance with the GDPR, so the European Data Protection laws, because this always is a challenge in Europe there. And the good point is, if you do this very compliant with the GDPR, you do not have the responsibility for the data. So there is no big intermediary there who is responsible for all the data. And you can do this with master data and also with transaction data. So, and this is at the first impression, you think, okay, that's a burden here, but yeah, again, that can be a feature. And this is what this project is about, IDEAL, what we call that. And also we built their CO2 budget for end customers. And I think this, I want to mention that because I think in today's global economy, if we want to bridge the gap between carbon trading system, if we give things a price, but European carbon, the European cap and trade system there, we do not see the CO2, the amount of CO2 in products and inputs at the end. So if we know that the price is high enough, at least for a megaton CO2, $180 or I don't know, 300, then we can be sure there will be an impact. And this is good for decarbonization. But on this way to this high prices, we still don't have that high prices. And this is a problem. So on the other side, we have suppliers and they want to see this information and the systems in itself. So how do you account CO2 with a CO2 system like EU ETS, and on the other side, the greenhouse gas protocol and scope 1, 2, 3, and especially with scope 3, it doesn't match today. So it's double counting, it doesn't match. I gave an example with the Norway electricity. And if you want to use CO2 as a unit there, as an indicator worldwide, and this is my point here, we have to go down to, as Marta said, to the primary level, to measuring that, to digitalize that, and then we can give them sense, the data, and evaluate that with different CO2 levels. So you can have different labels, for instance, for hydrogen all over the world. They can differ, but it's important to have you can prove and verify the underground, the underlying data, the primary data. That's important. Otherwise, it's not possible to transfer.
I think to avoid the double counting is a very good area, good field for the blockchains as a nature. So I agree with you for such an importance for to keep the rule the very worldwide consistently.
So if I get your answers right, you say we need a strategy first, which is holistically, and then we need indicators to measure the input and output, so we can see if there's progress made, and we can interconnect all the dots that are in the system.
Yeah, and the good news is we can, it's not a chicken and egg problem. So we can start right now with companies, and Shingo, you showed that, right? I mean, it's possible to do this right now to start. And on the other side, we have to integrate registries, for instance, worldwide, and the evaluation schemes to bring them together. But we can start both right now. We don't have to wait for each other.
Well, thank you. There's a question in the chat from Matthias Wissner. He wants to ask to Mr. Schulz, do you think that the change of mindset will come out of itself, or do we need more regulation, obligations to achieve a higher degree of digitalization? And what are the main differences between Europe and Japan in this regard? Well, that's one of the questions you always get at the difference, to point out the differences. But I think the first part of the question we discussed partly, and I think if anybody else wants to step in after Martin Schulz, please feel free.
Well, we do have a change of mindset. It doesn't come out of itself, but people do have insight, and we see the problems. And since we see them more lively with the environment changing, the mindset change is clearly here. The problem is at major companies, you already feel this impact of the mindset, but you have seen from all the presentations, this enormous complexity companies have to deal with to have, well, really an impact. And in terms of data, not only that we need all the data, but when companies, and let's say an efficient production company has a rate of return of, let's say, 3 to 5%, and it manages, as Professor BARDT has shown, to bring that down through additional digital ideas, devices by 1%. That is huge, especially when they don't put this into their profits, but into their savings for the environment. But the bigger problem is these are the big companies. They can do a lot, and it has an impact. The wider economy, smaller companies, they often don't know what to do. The driving force here is increase CO2 prices and do this efficiently. You can do this brute force, just getting the taxes on CO2 up. That can help and has an impact. It changes the mindset tremendously. But as you just see in Germany with capping, and in Japan as well, capping gasoline prices, not so easy to do something like that. What you need to do is to do it in a much smarter way. And that means that you also help companies with the change of mindset by providing them some tools. And this is what we have been talking today. Companies, well, need the higher price to adjust to it, to get the competition in, but then they also need some clear ideas how they can actually do the savings. And if they are the good guys, to show, not just to the regulator, but in general, that they are the good guys and that where the savings are coming from. And for that, we need to get this accounting. So my point is, perhaps it is not so much in the regulation, it's in the price that is a much more flexible approach to get the mindset not only changing, but the mind ticking and running and coming up with good ideas.
Thank you. Anybody else who wants to add to this?
Yeah,
start, please.
I mean, pricing is absolutely important. No doubt about that. The question is, how do companies react? And I mean, what we want basically is to increase digitalization throughout the companies, and their carbon price is one driver, but maybe not one sufficient to really shift that kind of mindset for a company. I think and maybe another important element is in fostering this enabling technologies is being a good example. More than half of the companies we've asked say our main reason for not becoming more digital is we don't see a benefit. So, and if there are good examples where also medium-sized companies do see a benefit, and you see, oh, that's my competitor or that's my friend in that company over there, and he's doing good progress, and there's a benefit for him, so there should also be a benefit for me. I think that's something where things gets or where pace increases, and where companies get forward. Right now, the impression very often is that IT projects are more costly and more complex than planned, and it is a burden then necessary, but complicated and so on, and that doesn't help really in well giving that fun aspects and that positive outlook to digitalization processes. And I think that's so therefore it's example, it's standardization, it's yeah, all that is necessary. And on the other hand, well, when everyone says we need to become more digital, we run into a severe problem we already have, the lack of people implementing all that and doing all that. Huge scarcity, there's already a huge scarcity, and both countries, Japan and Germany, face a big demographic change and reduction of people working. So already huge scarcity of IT professionals, data engineers, and so on, the people we need to organize that digital transformation. And that will become more complex in the future when more companies are there and are willing and able to start that process.
Thank you. Marta Marmiroli, you wanted to add something, and then Shingo Fujimoto, you both represent companies, so maybe you can give us an insight from within.
Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you. Actually, I would put the positive things on this point, and I think at this point, compared to a few years ago, we have new technologies that may help this middle level or small level company. Few years ago, any company want to digitalize or increase their digital operations and to install in their place and to be able to manage and operate. Now we have services. The digitalization through services is really something that can be affordable from a financing point of view. It's just connected to the daily operation or income that they have. So it's not that they need a big investment and at the starting. Plus, operation are made by other company expertise, so they don't need to have an internal staff or IT people that do that. So I think that from now, services will be more flexible, increase, and give the opportunity to this middle or small company to approach or to use digitalization more than what is possible now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you
FUJIMOTO.
for we need to be support to the such a the middle size the businesses. So as another one another speaker mentioned to there is at this moment there is no benefit enough benefit for to reduce the CO2 right now. However, if we are considering or running from the behavior economics right now, we better to design that system for the more easy to use or motivate to participate. That is more important for this kind of the activities. So I think we support the Schwartz, the Dr. Schwartz. So we need to change the mind, but we also need to be change another people's mind using the technologies and systems. That is my personal opinion to be added. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got two further questions, and we're coming to the end of our time. So do any of the panelists see any need for establishing other greenhouse gas indicators and eventually regulate, reduce, and trade them as currently is happening with CO2? Any views on this?
Oh, actually, CO2 is just a side effect. What we need to do is we focus on energy and material. We need to get much more efficient. That is the point. Then we get the CO2 down and many of the other things as well.
Any other views?
Yeah, I mean, just to add further point here is, for instance, the other Sustainable Development Goals, like if you want to prove that you produced, for instance, a battery, but without child work, etc. Where did the water come from? If you do hydrogen in the process, etc., etc. So in Europe already, this is we have a lot of laws and rules for that. So you have to provide that. If you look to the sustainability report, big companies already have to provide on a yearly base. You have to integrate these numbers as well. I think it's not so much about expanding the greenhouse gas indicators here. It's more about to make different systems interoperable. That is, I think, much more important.
And just to add one short remark, it's not just CO2 when it comes to greenhouse gases, it's CO2 equivalents. And so that's maybe important to make that a little clearer when we are talking about CO2 and when we talk about greenhouse gases or what kind of greenhouse gases.
Well, thank you. So basically, everybody answered the last two questions. So it's just really nice if everybody can interact. So the final question is, decarbonization, in addition to being a technical issue, is a deeply political one, which we've partly mentioned already. So all technical questions are obsolete if the central political challenge of decarbonization is not taken up. It is, sorry, the systemic system question. Is it a green capitalism? Is a green capitalism the solution? Is this enough? Does this work? Or do we have to go much further? So how can we move up? We can kind of make this maybe as a final statement as well from everybody. Where do you think we need to go? How do we get to smart and sustainable value chains? I think this question basically indicates this already. So Martin Schulz, you want to start, please?
Yeah, well, I'm here with the tough solution. We need to get CO2 prices up to get the competition in, and then we need to be able to trade throughout the value chains, not only money and goods as so far. We need to be able to do that with CO2, and we need to be able to do this on a global level. And getting such value chains with CO2 integrated, that is a big challenge. So we start that with all the technologies and ideas we have, and we better start now.
Well, thank you. Hubertus, do you want to go next?
Yes, thank you. Of course, it's a political issue, and the political task, the main political task, is to make the natural scarcity we have, so how much greenhouse gas can be absorbed by the atmosphere, into a rule-based and well, let's say political, legal, hard scarcity. So, which in fact is a discussion about global carbon gaps and emission caps. And then the best mechanism to cope with scarcities is market economic principles. And I mean, market economies are about dealing with scarcities and producing innovations and best allocation to have as much prosperity with the scarcities we have. So therefore, I think yes, green capitalism with that politically set and legal scarcity that cap is a solution. And when we talk about prices and so on, of course, it's not kind of capitalism which ignores environmental issues. That's what the state has to provide. But without market economic principles, we won't have the efficiency and the innovations we need to solve the problem.
Thank you. Jens STRÜKER, do you want to add your final statement, please?
Sure. I think CO2 prices are absolutely necessary, and we have to increase them, of course. And I deeply believe that technology can help. So innovation, when we get with the CO2 price enough incentives for innovation, I deeply believe that technology can solve problems here, and we have to believe in that. Because otherwise, I think if we talk about a decreasing cake here and not about growth, we will face allocations battle, etc. And this doesn't help with decarbonization at all. So I just have one minor issue here. I think with the CO2 prices we have today, that's not enough. As I mentioned during my talk, I think it's very important to show CO2 prices elements at the end product level, on the end product level. I think this is very important, because otherwise we have to wait too long. It's hard, and maybe it can help really to show and prove that the delta you did, it's not all about the absolute level of CO2 within a product. It's also the improvement there, the delta that you can prove, and for customers, for suppliers, etc. I think that's very important.
Thank you. So Marta Marmiroli and Shingo Fujimoto are also going to give their last statements. I already see Phoebe's hold green. So I think we still have 2 minutes to do this. So Marta, would you want to start?
Yes, just I will follow the same answer. I strongly believe that technology is also very important. Political and it can help. We go back to the mindset we were speaking, but I think everybody agreed that PV was not absolutely affordable before, but now with the technology evolution, it's really we have cheap electricity for PV. Same for the batteries. It was not reasonable to have batteries, but because the evolution in other, how can I say, for example, computers or other application, now we have batteries that can be used for the grid, so for the decarbonization. So I would say that technology, at least half of the importance in this long road to decarbonization is technology.
Well, thank you. And Shingo Fujimoto, please.
Yeah, I will be keeping short. I'm following to the Dr. Schwartz, the opinion. So we need to start right now. So my original adding would be we need to be collaborations. We could see that today the many technologies in the different field, and no one does not have the silver bullet for the decarbonization. So we need to be work together and to achieve the huge goal and how to solve the goal. That is our will. So we would like. I'm very honored to be presented here and talk to you soon. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. everybody for their insightful input and the great discussion. I hope the audience has enjoyed it as much as I did, and I'm happy to hand over to Phoebe Holtgreen now, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All distinguished speakers, our chair, Dr. NELIGAN, for your contributions and for taking your time in order to take part today. So to close this event now, just allow me a few remarks, please. We had a great audience today from a broad range of fields, and thank you all for your interest in this event and for participating, also for your questions and comments. Our sincere thanks once again to our cooperation partners for all your brain power and input to make this Japanese-German exchange possible. Thank you as always, and we hope for many more future opportunities. For further information on the broad range of events organized and hosted by the JDZB, please check out our website at jdzb.de or follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. This year is actually truly a year of JDZB events within our focus on digitization and artificial intelligence, as we have organized already several events in relation to this topic within the first half of 2022. And more will follow. Please allow me to mention two of them. So next week on June 10th, there will be a symposium on artificial intelligence and law at Waseda University in Tokyo on site, but also streamed on YouTube, which we will host together with DJJV, BRAC, DWIH Tokyo, and Waseda University. And during the upcoming JDZB Focus Week 2022 in September, we will hold a Japanese, French, German symposium on digital learning in cooperation with EHESS in Paris. So please stay tuned. Thank you very much once again. Please take good care. Have a good evening in Japan, a good afternoon in Germany, a good time wherever you are on this world, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe. Goodbye.